most of you know me in this room, but I'm Lucy Marks and I run the Norfolk Network. And I think we've got lots of members here, so I'm going to really crack on now and just introduce Josh. So Josh is co-founder of Goodery. It's an organic food delivery business working with local producers. I remember the excitement of Goodery starting in 2020. It was a response to the needs of the local community during COVID-19, and I can't wait to see what's been happening and how it's been going. But Josh is a geologist, I think, yeah, and a humanitarian. And would you call yourself an entrepreneur?
I try not to.
And you're motivated by finding ways to help communities both here and around and abroad become more resilient in the face of environmental and economic hazards. And your focus is on food resilience in East Anglia. So today Josh is going to ask that question, what does local mean to you? And he's going to share Goodery's approach to business and the joys and lessons in the journey so far. So please join me in giving Josh a very warm welcome.
Thank you. Cheers, Lucy. It's lovely to be here. It's amazing, right at the forum in Norwich. Yeah, I do try not to call myself entrepreneur, partly because I think it conjures up an image of someone who kind of knows what they're doing. I feel like sometimes directors should have like learner badges on them, like learner drivers, because that's definitely where I'm at, and my co-founder Matty as well. So yeah, going local. What does that mean? So yeah, that's what I'll be talking about. I don't really need to introduce myself. Lucy did a great job. Yeah, trained geologist. Worked here in Norfolk. There's not many rocks, so I decided to study people and food instead. It was when I was at university here in Norwich. I did kind of consider social sciences and food chains and human geography as sort of the soft stuff. I wanted to think about volcanoes, and the more that I thought about volcanoes and wanted to study volcanoes, the more I realised that actually the really important bit about volcanoes and how damaging they are is the people. It's the community resilience. And so that got me thinking, what makes a resilient community? And so I carried on living in Norwich for most of the last decade, and love it here, it's great. But that question that I had also started asking as a humanitarian with a charity in London, working in England and elsewhere, what makes communities resilient? And that's partly what I'm going to address today, but also I want to talk about Goodery and the two are interlinked. So, what does local mean to you? Is it your street, a copse of trees down the road? Is it your local shopkeeper? Or perhaps it's your city, a team uniform, a flag or an accent? I haven't quite developed the Norfolk accent yet. I'm from Essex. I don't really have an Essex accent either. To me, local means people and place, and the two are not distinct. Place influences your people, and your people influence your place. Your conception of that, and cognitively, people and place, your people and your place makes up pretty much the vast majority of your reality. We live in a weird world where it's easier and cheaper for me to buy an item from a company in Guangxi in China through a website that's named after a large jungle than it is for me to go and buy the same thing from a guy just over there in the market. I could do it on my phone now, and it would be easier for me than going and get it at the market, which is just over there. Cost and convenience, these are the two threads which connect. Sorry, so my timer, it's very necessary for me. So just call it 15 minutes from now. That cost is the thread which connects your people in your place, your community, to everything else. It's what sets that aside from everything else. Why would I buy something from a company in another part of the world? Well, perhaps because I can't get it in Norwich, because I can't get it made here, and that's pretty reasonable. But leaks at this time of year, this is what I call a local leak. It's massive, they're not all this big. This is from an organic farm near Ipswich. Sorry, talking about localism. I like Ipswich as a farming place. They grow lots of good stuff there, near there. I could go and get this delivered, and it could be from somewhere else. It could be from France or Spain. But this is a Suffolk leek. These are spelt grains from actually another Suffolk company called Hodmedod's. But these are grown in Norfolk. They got shipped to Suffolk, and then they came to the Goodery warehouse. They're now out of date, but I'm going to still eat them. These are local products that have stayed in the locality. They haven't been shipped anywhere else. If you go to a supermarket that rhymes with Esco's, and you go to the organic section, you pick up a potato, or a bag of potatoes in a plastic bag, and it'll say, grown in Norfolk. You think, oh, sweet, local. I can get local food in my supermarket. And for some supermarkets, that's true. For that particular supermarket, that potato will have travelled most of the way across the country, perhaps even to Scotland, before it then comes back packaged to your local supermarket. So we're in a bit of a weird world. That's to say that. The norm is to select for price. And that's even as companies here, that's written into our articles or into our constitutions. Implicitly, our job as directors of companies or as workers for companies is to maximise profits for shareholders. And so if I have an option to buy something that's cheaper, then I have to do that. I'm arguing today that that's a short-sighted view of how to do business, and I'm going to explain a little bit about why. That culture kind of came to the fore in 2020, at the start of the pandemic, when suddenly we were cut off from our immediate communities and very much plugged into the online world, which meant everywhere else. Not necessarily. Some people were completely disconnected. It was in that environment that Goodery was born, and our idea was to connect local, conscious consumers who suddenly couldn't get access to their produce with local makers and growers and businesses who couldn't get their stuff to conscious consumers. We were going to be the Amazon, Etsy, Ocado. We were going to be a local, hyper-local online grocery store. That's a cool idea, and I still think it's a cool idea. For reasons I can't really go into now because it would take too long to explain, we couldn't do that. And for me and my co-director Matty, that was a blessing in disguise. Instead of becoming a tech platform, we decided to pivot ourselves to become a truly local veg box delivery company. I'm not going to say we're a community-supported agriculture scheme. There are those in Norfolk, and they're great. But we sell bananas from Costa Rica. We can't grow them here. I can't get them locally, so we buy them from there. So truly local. It's a bit of a vacuous term. I could say that we're truly local, and you can't really argue with me unless you're a community-supported agriculture scheme, in which case you probably could. By the way, I just want to say that it's kind of ironic talking about going local to this crowd, or people tuning on online, because I'm probably preaching to the choir. You're here, you're at the Norwich bid, you understand local community, you understand what it is to be part of a community. Anyway, so that blessing in disguise that Matty and I inherited with Goodery was that we were able to pivot the company to focus a lot more on the relationships with our customers, with our local businesses who we supply, and particularly with our growers. And that culminated slightly in actually starting our own farm to be able to train more local organic growers, because there's not enough supply. Goodery's job is to increase supply and demand of organic produce in this area. The reason for that goes back to that people and that place. We want to protect people and their health, and we believe that organic food or organically grown food is the key for people's health, customers and growers, and we believe it's the key to health for the place, for our local environment, our biodiversity, our soil. Particularly here in East Anglia, where we're behind on protecting our soil. That we need to do more work in it, and that's what we're trying to do. So what I would say is that our approach is all about relationship. It's about relationship with our suppliers and relationship with our customers. Why does relationship matter? When cash is king, and believe me, I understand that cash is king. I live that. Many of us represent businesses here, and we understand that without cash, kind of nothing really works. But if cash is king, I believe that relationship is divine. And I don't mean that lightly. I'm coming from a faith background with that. Our ability to connect with each other, our ability to care for one another is, I think, what sets us apart. I think it's what makes us different, not as Goodery, as people, as humans. And I think we have to be more human in our businesses. Goodery's becoming, I'm kind of mixing up the talk here, I'm talking about the future. Goodery's becoming a community interest corporation, a CIC. I believe that CICs shouldn't really need to exist. Because if we're all based on relationship, if we're all based on trust, then it wouldn't really matter in terms of our articles of association whether they have this particular clause on them. We are becoming a CIC for other reasons in terms of the longevity of our aims and our vision, whether Matty or I are there or not. But imagine a world where companies were so dedicated to their local communities that wouldn't matter. That would be pretty sweet. I think going back to my humanitarian work, one of the things I realised was that a connected community, a community where trust was high, was a resilient community. And until very recently, that was quite an abstract thought. That was to do with communities in the developing world where a volcano might erupt or where climate change was disrupting food chains. Unfortunately, that's happening here. Climate change is disrupting our local food chains. War is disrupting our global food chains. We've seen inflation. We haven't seen the majority of it. It's going to get worse. And so, until recently, this was quite an abstract and philosophical thought. It's kind of a reality now, and we've got to come to terms with the fact that global problems affect our local economies. An economy that is based on trust and local transactions as preference is a much more resilient community, and I've learned that from loads of different places in the world. And I'd love to see that happen more and more here in Norwich, because it would create a more resilient community. I mean resilience economically, but also in terms of hunger, in terms of seeing families being fed enough on good food, on local food that's full of nutrition. So that's where we want to see Norwich's economy, and our part in that is to encourage that. And so we want to see growers who have confidence that there is a market for their produce, because people in Norwich want the good stuff. That's the aim. We want to see businesses and we want to see consumers who want to buy stuff from us or directly from local farms if they can get it, because the quality is that much better. So yeah, in a technical word, we want to transform the food value chain in Norfolk and in East Anglia, so that the value is accounted for all the way back to the soil, the farmer, the transport, that we're not ignoring costs to the environment. And for us, that's what being local is about. It's about protecting our environment, it's about protecting our people, and we believe we're doing what we can to see that happen. Again, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir. You guys know the importance of community. So I've done this all in the wrong order, so I've probably missed some stuff out. But we've got a long way to go. We're not perfect, but I'm proud of the fact that we've protected so much soil so far, that we've been able to provide customers who need to know exactly what they're eating because they're on recovery diets for leukemia and cancer. People who want to know they don't have harmful chemicals in their food, we can give them that, and that's why we're organic, is to protect that, not just in East Anglia but globally, with bananas and coffee and that kind of thing. I think I sped through that a little bit quick, but does anyone have any questions? Yes.
Hello. Something you said towards the end there really made me think. What are some examples of greenwashing that you've seen in the food sector, where people are kind of saying, a lot of people do that thing, they say we're going to plant a tree for every transaction, but that isn't necessarily a great way to offset it. Like, what are some examples where that's happened, or like examples of things that companies could do to help further protect like the soil and the ecosystem?
Yeah, that's a big question.
Yeah,
thanks. I personally don't think that offsetting via trees is a bad thing. I think it's great, but it's not a very quick. It's not going to work very quickly, and if the climate science is to be trusted, and I trust it, then we don't have that long. And so there are other ways of offsetting which are quicker, and I don't think offsetting is a bad thing at all. I think we do need to get to net zero, because absolute zero is just not going to happen. Sorry, but certain companies can become absolute zero. Certain actions can be absolute zero carbon. I mean, in terms of carbon footprint. What are some practical things? Shorten your supply chains. Don't get things from far away if you can get them locally. We're still buying stuff from the West Country because they have a longer growing season and because they have more organic farms. We personally believe the protection of soil is more important than the miles travelled in terms of within the UK. That's our company's position. But that's why we started a farm in Norfolk, so that we can get those very, very fresh products from half an hour away in an electric vehicle. There are so many answers, and I don't want to say, hey, here's the silver bullet, the golden ticket, whatever, the bronze medallion. There isn't a single answer, and I think that there are people who are much more qualified to answer what those people's businesses' specific methods of lowering their carbon footprint are. But I think we've got to also think about more widely environmental, not just climate, but biodiversity and soil health. And the reason I'm banging on about soil health is because if we don't, then our children and our grandchildren are going to be facing much more serious problems than we are now in terms of food price hikes, because we're growing. So it's really important.
Thank you.
Hi Josh, that was really good, thank you, and I believe in everything that you stand for and the ideas that you put forward. But as a conscious consumer, you mentioned that it's cheaper for you to buy something from the other side of the world than it is to buy locally sometimes. Mm. And you mentioned that inflation is going to get worse and that prices are obviously going up. How do you try and persuade the price-conscious consumer to make these transitions from making cheaper choices online versus buying locally? How do you persuade people to make those sorts of transitions?
Yeah, great question. And I think that For some people, you're just not going to. For some people, cash is king and that's it. And you've just got to, the cost is king. And however, I think if you can have a sit down over a beer or whatever, or a coffee, roasted locally, then you can talk about the fact that every pound you spend in your local economy has the effect of increasing the quality of life for you, as opposed to spending it elsewhere, where it probably benefits a guy in America. I'm not going to be specific about it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And sorry. And one thing I meant to say in the talk. This is like the key ending bit. Actually, we want to make food that is grown sustainably affordable. We want to see enough demand and enough supply that the economies of scale that are not destructive can kick in to the extent where it is cheaper for you to buy your potatoes from us than it is to buy from a supermarket. Or it is cheaper for you to buy your kombucha from the local makers through us than it is from buying from a supermarket or online. And actually, when we get local produce direct from our farms, such as our leeks, it is actually pretty. So it's really good value because it's just us in the middle. We go to the farm, we pick it up, and we sell it to you, usually in a box. And the fact that it's in a box makes it even cheaper because it's a more efficient way of selling food, and it's like ready, steady cook every week. But yeah, that wasn't to do with the point. But yeah, that's what I'd say. Is it can actually be cheaper, but I think also that conversation about your local economy, every pound you spend here actually makes a difference. There was one thing I saw on Instagram ages ago, or Facebook or something, saying actual footage of local business owner, small business owner, when they see an online transaction, and it's like someone dancing. It's like, yeah, it's true. Like you make someone's day when you order something from someone local. I've never actually seen anyone in the market dance, but I imagine they're dancing inside because it does make a difference. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
Great talk.
Oh.
It was really lovely to hear about Goodery. I was in London last week, and every single billboard carries an advert for a delivery company of some sort. It's all get your groceries, on the go, just download our app and we'll have it delivered.
Mm.
So there's definitely a market there for it. In Norwich, we're very blessed to be a countryside city. We're surrounded by reams and reams of arable land. So it's right there for the taking at any point. How do you see yourself getting into these larger cities, considering you may not have as great access to fresh produce?
Yeah, really interesting. First of all, I think our focus now, our project and our dream is based in Norwich. And actually, there are some really good organisations in London. One in particular is called Growing Communities. They're a network of veg box schemes, and they actually get produce that is incredibly fresh from local farms in Essex and actually in Norfolk as well. And it's driven down. It's obviously slightly less fresh than you get it here, but it's the same day compared to a supermarket where it's shipped off to somewhere 2 days later in packages, shipped back into your, and it's sitting on a refrigerated shelf.
So that lovely plastic packaging, so it's all moist and fun.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, exactly. And so the logistics of selling into big cities is not so much of a problem. I think for us, it's a case of not spending too much effort on expanding our horizons and actually spending a lot more effort growing our roots here in East Anglia. And and if we do expand, if we find that this works and that we're still here in a year and people want to buy this stuff and growers want to sell it, then maybe we can set up hubs in West Norfolk and in North Suffolk so that we can serve more customers. But yeah, we've got contingency plans if we suddenly get an explosion of customers, but we're taking it one step at a time. And I really believe that local matters. And I would say if you're in Cambridge, don't wait for, if you're in Cambridge, don't wait for Goodery to come to you. Go to Cambridge Organics. They're doing a great job. If you're in Brighton, I've forgotten what they're called. Called like Better Food Traders or something like that. No, that's a network. I think it's just called Better Food. If you're in Manchester, use Unicorn. There are these amazing organisations doing what we're doing, but they're even later on in the stage and they're doing great. So again, nobody's perfect, but I think these people are trying hard. So.
Just a comment rather than a question. You mentioned Suffolk a couple of times. And actually, we don't mind that, because you talk about what's local.
Yeah,
and
it's very gracious of you.
Yeah, we're all part of the Iceni, really. We're still that tribe. Whereas when you get down into Essex, they're completely different.
Well, I think there's a line in the middle of Essex, which kind of crosses just south of Braintree, which is my hometown. Yeah, I think that's East Anglia.
Okay.
Yeah, so Colchester is just about all right. Anything south of that, yeah, you're right. Yeah. Different.
I've just got a final question from the sort of business side of things. What kind of support and inspiration have you had, to sort of get this going and continue it and believe in it?
Yeah, well, right at the start, it was actually our sort of main founder, John, who's this crazy American dude. He wouldn't mind me saying that. And he brought us all together as a team, and it was his dream to start with to supply NHS workers with good quality food when they were locked down and couldn't get access to food, and it kind of snowballed from there. So I've learned a huge amount from him. Loads of other local business people, and this is again why I'm kind of saying I'm preaching to the choir here in Norwich. Norwich businesses are out to help each other, I think, for the most part. And we've had so much support and so much encouragement from local businesses. Matty and I have personally been on, can you say personally? We've both personally been on the Cambridge Social Ventures Incubator, which has been really helpful just to learn what a balance sheet means and other basic business stuff that unless you kind of go out to learn it, you're never really told until someone tells you. So big shout out to Norwich business community because it's been epic. And I'd say no, that's the answer.
No, that's fantastic. Any more questions? I think we'll just finish it there then. Thank you so much.